when I started, the character came for Past Perfect. And when I started thinking about her, and I knew it was going to have something to do with espionage, there was another part of the brain that was going on about why did all this happen in Iraq and how did we get it so wrong. I've written another espionage novel just because I read a lot about spooks. I recall that in '89, when the Berlin Wall fell and the East German government imploded, that the powers that be in the U.S. were shocked that it happened, and it happened so fast. They kind of thought that the Cold War would go on forever. I thought of all the reasons that these two mistakes were similar. And then I started saying, well, was it everybody in the CIA, this agency of smart people, or was it that the upper echelons were maybe feeding the people in power what they wanted to hear, or the people in power ignoring what didn't fit their story? So the Berlin and East German business fit in. Also, in my last book that I had written that was an espionage novel, Shining Through, which was a movie with Melanie Griffith and Michael Douglas, I was just so fascinated by that whole secret world. And not only that, but of ordinary people who operate in this secret world, who aren't just guys in a trench coat walking off into a noir universe. I did a lot of research about the CIA and other aspects of the book. For the CIA, I spoke with people who were currently in the agency. I spoke with former employees. I read probably, it seems to me, every memoir by a former intelligence agent, read history. The whole point was not to get national secrets, obviously, to get their language, to get their style, to get their way of thinking. And I was also interested in what people in the agency do who aren't spies, who aren't operatives, because Katie Shotland in the book is one of those people who wasn't. She's sat in front of a computer. But the book is not just about espionage. It's about her life and, in some ways, the ordinariness of it. Her husband's a veterinary pathologist at the Bronx Zoo. I did some research into that and then spent a day up in the Bronx Zoo with the chief of veterinary pathology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on because the more comfortable you feel and the more knowledge you have, the more authentic the book's going to feel, the more the little details are right. Characters always come first in my novels. Katie came to me, and I just had a sense of her. And the sense was, here is someone in her late 30s who has a hurt from the past and can't let go. This is not an extraordinary situation. I mean, there are so many of us, whether it's a lost job or a lost love or some injustice that's been done. And, of course, everybody says, get over it. But it's so easy to say, and it's so hard to do. So once I had that feeling that this was something in the past, and then I had that whole Iraq, East Germany parallel, I thought, 15 years since the fall of East Germany and the fall of the wall. So that would be a perfect time. She would be in her early 20s, and she'd be working at the agency. And there you have it. I mean, there you don't have it. As the character and the story, the initial feeling of the character comes, an idea of the plot comes, but then the character develops first as I write the outline, because I'm going to see what's going to challenge her. But then as in the writing, I mean, there are those surprises like she has anxiety attacks. Did I know this when I began? She wasn't quivering with anxiety. And suddenly her kid was not just cardboard child, but he rounded out, but he's also on his way to weight loss camp as the book begins, and she's feeling very guilty because she's thinking, well, maybe he thinks I can't accept him as he is. The process of the character that comes first as a feeling or an idea keeps growing and growing, and you keep adding to her, and she keeps becoming more and more real for this, I think it was 2 years that it took me to write. It's like focusing a camera. Halfway through, say after the first draft or so, you can see, oh, right, I know who that is. But you need 2 or 3 more drafts in order to get the clarity. She was a perfectionist, and she came from a family where everybody was golden. Each person in his or her own way was golden. The mother's a psychiatrist, and she's also one of the most chic women in New York. The father's a successful businessman, but he also happens to be this super menschy, warm, decent guy. The sister's slightly nuts, but she's a gifted poet. It was, as someone says to her, failing is not an option in your family. Part of that was just the bruised ego. But more than that, she felt that injustice had been done in the sense that she was fired from the CIA, escorted off the premises by 2 goons from security, and never told why. And then there's that terrible feeling, did I make some horrible mistake that possibly cost people's lives or put people in danger? Was it a clerical error? Could it be part of some cabal? But because she wasn't an operative, because she was an analyst in the agency, she couldn't figure out where she would come into something like that. The challenge for me always in my writing is putting a relatively ordinary, she could call, as she describes herself as total Manhattan sushi woman. She's a fairly sophisticated person, but she has no extraordinary talents or extraordinary courage. And that was the fun of it, to test where a regular person would go who wasn't trained for danger and who didn't seek danger. I don't think when I begin a novel, oh, I must have someone the reader will relate to. Essentially what I do is I'm writing the novel I most want to read, so I have to have someone I can relate to. What I most can relate to is that ordinary women are not so ordinary, that under really rough circumstances, whether the circumstances just fall on their laps or whether they're seeking out something, that more women than not will rise to the occasion. I've never been attracted to writing about victimized women, even though they may indeed have had bad stuff happen to them, because I think most women I know are not victimized. Most women I know have even more strength than they're aware of, and the fun for me is uncovering that strength.